In this video, I will give you my predictions for UFC Denver. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Back with an event that a lot of people are like, oh man, this event sucks, this event sucks. Let me tell you something. If you think this event sucks, next week's card is going to be hell in the cell, and not in a good way. When you're watching the card next week, you're going to look back on this card and think, damn, didn't know how good I had it. But anyway, we are here. Predictions at the top of the card. Rose Namajunas, Tracy Cortez, come on. Namajunas was supposed to be fighting Maycee Barber here. Maycee Barber has to pull out of the fight, so in steps Tracy Cortez to save the day, and I think the step up is just too big. And now credit where credit is due. Cortez is a good wrestler. She should be able to get the fight down to the mat. Rose Namajunas doesn't have the best takedown defense. We've seen her lose minutes and rounds because of it. I could see that happening in this fight, so if you want to take Tracy Cortez's round spread, I think that's the move, because the fight probably goes to distance. I don't think Cortez is going to lose every round. So if you feel like the judges' scorecards are going to decide this fight and you think that Tracy Cortez can get takedowns, then yes, betting her round spread is the move. Although betting on main events in general, not a great idea, not something I would advise. And it's not just because I get them wrong often, but also main events are where you see strange things happen. Freak injuries, like think Tom Aspinall fighting Curtis Blades, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier 3. You might get bad judging in these big fights. You might see strange stoppages, like Jason Herzog stopping Jared Cannonier a couple of weeks ago. And by betting on one side of the main event, you're essentially betting against the other side of the main event, who on most cards is going to be the best fighter on the card. And what I mean by that is just look at this card, for example. Let's say you bet Tracy Cortez straight up. You bet Tracy Cortez money line plus money. Cool. You'd be betting against the only former champion on the card and the highest ranked fighter on the card. So again, betting main events, not something I would advise for the long run. It's also where most people are putting their money when they're betting, and that's normally not a good thing. So if I were to give you any advice, if you were to take anything from this video, if you were to bet exclusively on prelim fights every time, you would probably have way better results. But anyway, as far as this fight goes, I like the footwork, the striking, the 5-round experience from Rose. I like that it's in Denver. She's the rightful favorite here, and ultimately is probably going to steal the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. So give me the former champion, give me the better striker, give me Rose Namajunas to win by decision. Next, we got old men throwing down in the co-main event. Mixed results for Santiago, Ponzinibbio, and Muslim Salikhov as of late. And that's going to happen when you start getting up there in age. One guy's 37, the other guy's 40, but the decline has looked different for these two. For Ponzinibbio, he's losing fights against ranked guys, stronger competition, and he's going to war in these fights. Now, Muslim Salikhov, on the other side, has gone from a guy who had never been knocked out in MMA to being knocked out twice in his last 4 fights. I think his time is up. He's clearly slowing down at this point in his career, and rightfully so. He's 40 years old. He's almost half a Biden out there. So it's understandable and excusable, but it's also the reason why Santiago Ponzinibbio is one of the best bets of the week. Ponzinibbio is always going to fight for your money. He's no stranger to going to war. We've seen him dig deep to win fights after getting lit up by good strikers. Like look at the fight against Miguel Baeza. We referenced this a couple of weeks ago. One of the best fights you've ever seen. Not something that's going to be on somebody's Mount Rushmore of all-time fights because of the name value, but you go back and watch that fight, it was sick, and it was also cool to see Santiago Ponzinibbio dig deep like he has so many times before and find a way to win. So even in this fight, if him and Salikhov are trading in the first round and it's close, I don't think Salikhov's going to be able to hang with him after that. You really got to love the output from Ponzinibbio. Really everything about this matchup is screaming knockout win for him, because he's got better boxing, more power in his hands, he's taller, he's longer, he's younger, he throws more strikes, he's faced better competition, and he's got a better chin. So all things considered, we're taking Santiago Ponzinibbio to get it done this week. Give me Pons by knockout. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. You want to go a step further, share this with somebody you know is going to be watching the fights this week. All free ways to support the channel, greatly appreciated. Next, we have a banger of a fight. One of the best fights on the card by far. Drew Dober fighting John Silva this week. Silva steps in for Mike Davis. It's a better fight now in my opinion. Just a few days ago, Silva did Charles Jourdain like we've never seen somebody do Charles Jourdain before. He made it look easy. He dropped him in the first round. He finished him in the second round. He had Charles Jourdain shooting for takedowns.
Oh, you're a wrestler now.
And that's not really something we've seen him do before, but he had huge power coming back his way. That Silva power is no joke. He lands heavy, he's throwing everything into these strikes, and he's getting guys out of there. We saw the same thing in his debut against Weston Wilson. So there's a lot of momentum on the side of Silva. 2-0 in the UFC, back-to-back knockouts, fighting out of one of the best gyms in the game today. He does, however, have his work cut out for him. That Drew Dober chin is legendary. Songs are sung about that chin, let me tell you. And if you don't know about Drew Dober's chin, just understand this. If you had Drew Dober's chin, your parents would have more respect for you. And Dober's got serious power in both hands to go along with that God-given durability, which makes him a tough matchup for most lightweights on the roster at this point. Now, he is coming off a loss to Renato Moicano. In that fight, he was a step behind on the mat, like most people are when they fight Renato Moicano, but on the feet, he was getting the better of the exchanges. And you'll notice that's how Drew Dober is losing these fights. He's losing fights when guys are able to take him down, but when guys just strike with him, that's when they put themselves in a bad position, even if they're having success. You look at that fight against Bobby Green, one of the better boxers in the division. Bobby Green's piecing him up. Bobby Green gets knocked out. You look at that fight against Rafael Alves. Rafael Alves landed some heavy shots, ends up getting knocked out. If guys want to strike with him, he has as good a chance as any, but if he gets taken down, that's where he struggles. Now, I don't think that Silva tries to take him down. I expect him to be content standing and banging with Drew Dober in this one, which makes it tricky. It reminds me a little bit of that Matt Frevola fight, a call with which we are very proud of. We predicted on this channel in the videos and the live stream that Matt Frevola would be the first person to knock out Drew Dober in the UFC, and sure enough he was. With that said, does Jan Silva knock him out? Well, he's got big power like Matt Frevola does, and he's willing to stand and bang. He's pretty accurate as well, which is surprising. Sometimes guys have big power and their winging shots are not that accurate. He knows where to put them. But I actually think the knockout comes from Drew Dober this week. I think he catches Silva in this one. I think Dober lands a big hook at some point and hands Silva his first loss in the UFC, because Silva's sharp, explosive, knocks guys out, but he's super confident, and you'll notice that in his performances because his hands are all the way down here. So if his hands are a bit low, I think that's going to cost them in this fight, because Dober's going to be moving forward, throwing with just as much power. If these guys land at the same time, I know Drew Dober's been knocked out once, Silva hasn't, but I'll still take the Dober chin for chin against anybody. Plus, this is at lightweight on short notice in Dober City. Bad matchup in my opinion for Silva. Not a fight that I think he should have been jumping at, just 2 weeks removed from his last one. So give me Drew Dober to win this fight by knockout. Next we have Gabriel Bonfim fighting at elevation against the guy who doesn't get finished. What are we doing? What are we doing here? Laying minus 400 on Gabriel Bonfim, who gassed out in a round and was the first and only person knocked out by Nicholas Dalby in the UFC, and he did that as a minus 650 favorite. Get out of town. We're gonna trust this guy in Mile High City, in the city that Carmelo Anthony built, again against the guy in Ange Loosa who's never been finished? No, we're not gonna do that. I don't care how big of a favorite he is. I don't care that you broke your elbow. To be the only guy finished by Nicholas Dalby in his career, that's pretty crazy. So I don't care how talented he is. I don't care how good he looked before that Nicholas Dalby fight. That's not something I can get behind. Will he win? Maybe. Should you bet on this fight one way or another? Absolutely not. I won't have any of this, but as far as a prediction goes, I'm gonna play the wait and see game with Gabriel Bonfim. You can give me the hard to put away underdog until Bonfim proves otherwise. So give me the guy that's gone the distance, has gone to war, has gotten his hand raised at the end of it. Give me Ange Loosa to win this fight inside the distance. Again, I'm not going to have any of that fight. If you want to see what I have, if you want the official betting article, you can go to kunithmma.com. That's going to give you the official betting article, as well as the DFS strategy guide, tools, data model, projections, optimizer, things like that. If you want your free prop of the week email, which by the time you're watching this has already been sent out, so you can send me a message on kunithmma.com if you want the prop of the week and you didn't quite get the email yet. Make sure you still sign up with your email after the fact so that you don't miss future ones. But congratulations to the over 1,100 recipients of the prop of the week email last week. Last week's prop of the week was Cub Swanson plus 3.5 at plus 110. That fight with Andre Fili ends up going the distance. It's a split decision. If we had plus 3.5 and it was a unanimous decision, but he won one round on every judge's scorecard, we would have won anyway. Talked about on the site how that's going to be the easiest button you click all week, and we feel the same about the prop of the week this week. So go on kunithmma.com, get your free prop of the week, get your money up, not your funny up. That's what you're putting in the script, Oscar. Get your money up, not your funny up. We're on a time crunch this week, aren't we? Next, we got middleweight sluggers in the Waffle House fight of the week. We've got Cody Brundage fighting Abdul Razak Alhassan. Brundage is no stranger to winging big shots, looking to get guys out of there with his big power. Abdul Razak Alhassan has won all of his fights by knockout, 11 of the 12 of those knockouts coming in the very first round. For Brundage, he's had a tough run in the UFC, and it's almost like he's gotten matched up like a stepping stone of sorts. sports when you start looking at some of the matchmaking that's come his way. Nick Maximov in his debut, who people were high on. Trishan Gore coming off the Ultimate Fighter show that people were interested in. You've got Michal Oleksiejczuk coming down from 205, knocks out Sam Alvey. What can he do at middleweight? Put him in there against Brundage. Adolfo Vieira, the most decorated jiu-jitsu player in the UFC today. SD Dumas, a polarizing figure that people either love or hate but are going to watch one way or another. Jacob Malkoun, maybe a little bit less so, but you know, we got a lot of respect for Malkoun on the channel, you heard. Zach Reese, tons of hype coming off Contender Series. Bo Nickel might be the next big thing, and you've seen that Abdul Razak Alhassan has found himself in similar situations. Been matched up with Munir Lazez, Chaos Williams, who's got big power, Joaquin Buckley, fan favorite, most recently Joe Pyfer, who's all the hotness. So these two have had some tough matchmaking along the way, but I think it's largely because most of the time they're going to give you a fun fight, they're going to put that effort out there, and they're not going to be the kind of guys that go on winning streaks in the UFC, but they are guys that are going to give you tough fights each and every time. Except that fight between Brundage and Dumas. That was not a tough fight for Dumas at all. But these guys have had mixed results in the UFC, right? Not great winning percentages on either side, but I think it's for different reasons. For Brundage, he just makes bad choices and doesn't play to his strengths. The dude grapples when he should strike and he strikes when he should grapple. It's like sitting on the TV and watching the couch, while Abdul Razak Alhassan is a round one knockout or bust kind of guy, and you don't see a lot of those guys doing that well in the UFC. If he doesn't win early, he's going to get tired, that power is going to fade, and he's no longer going to be a threat. So you pick your poison here. Who are you going to trust between two guys that are not trustworthy? Well, for me, I lean Cody Brundage, and I say that because he's an underdog and the fight should really be a pick'em. He just turned 30. Abdul Razak Alhassan is almost 39. I think Brundage still can give you quality minutes beyond round one, and I can't really say the same for his opponent, and I think he can get the wrestling going, and that's what's going to get it done for him in this one. So give me the younger guy, give me the guy with more ways to win, give me Cody Brundage to win this fight by decision. Next, we've got Christian Rodriguez fighting Julian Erosa, two junkyard dogs going head up at featherweight. Christian Rodriguez coming off of a win over Isaac Dalgarian, snatched that undefeated record off of him like he's done to many others, and now they throw C-Rod in there with a vet, and it makes for a very interesting fight because Rodriguez super well rounded. The dude can strike, his grappling is slick, and he doesn't have any quit in him, which I think is his best asset. He's somebody who can fight well when he's tired, so even if he's getting beat up early, if he's losing the early minutes, he can come back to win late. But he's got a tough task on his hands because he's got to deal with Juicy J, whom we've got a ton of respect for on the channel. Julian Erosa, definitely a new puzzle for C-Rod to solve because he's been fighting at bantamweight for a while. Maybe not quite bantamweight because he's not making weight, but you know what I mean. He was fighting guys who would weigh in at 135. But you go back and you look at his opponents, this is going to be the tallest and longest guy that he's ever seen, so he might have trouble getting past that length and finding the mark. And on the mat, Rodriguez has proven to be excellent, but it doesn't really matter how difficult you are to submit because most guys don't have that submission package that Julian Erosa does. I think that Julian Erosa, he's not somebody who jumps off the page when you're talking about best submission artists in the UFC, but he can wrap you up in a flash. And really, he does it as well as anybody. So while he's not somebody who you think of like the Damian Maias and Charles Oliveira's and Adolfo Vieiras of the world, Julian Erosa can slap something on you real quick. So even though C-Rod has been good on the mat, he's got to be very careful. And it's hard to go against Julian Erosa because he has all the tools here. The physical tools like the length and the height, that dog mentality that he brings into the cage because he's been knocked out so many times and it's like it doesn't matter to him. And he's got the skills to end this fight really at any point, so it's hard to go against him, but I do like my boy C-Rod to get it done here because he's going to land heavy punches and he's probably getting Julian Erosa out of there early. Julian Erosa's lost 7 times in the UFC. He's been knocked out in 6 of those losses, 7 knockouts total in his career. Erosa's been knocked out 6 times in the UFC out of his 7 losses, and Christian Rodriguez does have some pretty solid boxing. And Julian Erosa was knocked out by Alex Caceres 3 fights ago. He was knocked out by Fernando Padilla in around 90 seconds in the fight before last, and even last time out against Ricardo Ramos, before he found that choke, he did get hurt on the feet. I think Julian Erosa with a good chin is like a top 10 fighter in the division. The dude is great, but his durability is a liability, and I think that makes all the difference here. So I expect a brawl for as long as it lasts. I think this chin of C-Rod is going to hold up a lot better than it will for Erosa, so give me the youth, give me the fresher man, give me the momentum, give me Christian Rodriguez to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Joshua Van and Charles Johnson, and man, Man, oh man. I wish this fight was 5 rounds. Like, if something happens on fight day to Rose or Cortez, like, they should be upgraded to the main event because it's a sick fight and it's a shame that we're only getting 3 rounds of it. But similar styles on both sides. These guys want to box, throw a ton of strikes, good cardio, good toughness on both sides. Fight of the night. Lock it in. Joshua Van's looked great in the UFC, undefeated in the promotion, putting hands all over these guys every time he steps out there, and it's hard to imagine that he's not getting better at a rapid rate considering he's only 22 years old. And on the other side, Charles Johnson is figuring it out. He struggled a bit early on in his UFC run, but he's been super active, stays ready, answers the call when the UFC rings him, and he's coming off of back-to-back wins, and he's handing out veteran performances against young guys just like Joshua Van. You look at that fight against Azat Maksum, who people swore up and down was going to run through Charles Johnson, not even close to the case. You've got Jake Hadley, who was cleanly outstruck as well. He cashed as an underdog in both of those fights, and guess what? He's an underdog again. I like the value on the dog in this one. I think that Charles Johnson is better than anyone that Joshua Van has seen by far. Joshua Van can wrestle if he wants to, but I don't see him doing too much of that. I expect him to strike mostly in this one, and we've talked about it on the channel before. Guys are not outstriking Charles Johnson, at least not so far. If you look at the fights that he's lost in the UFC, Muhammad Makayev only wanted to take him down. Ode Osborne was not outstriking him. Charles Johnson took that on super short notice. He took him down in crucial spots to win that fight. Cody Durden, Rafael Estevam, same thing. These guys did not want to strike with him, and whenever they did, they were losing those minutes. When they decided to grapple is when they were winning the minutes. But guys who have just stood there and tried to strike with Charles Johnson, they end up losing. It doesn't work. And that's how I see this one going. I like the size advantage for Johnson. I like that he gets stronger as the fight goes on, so even if he drops the first round to Joshua Van, which is probably going to happen, he might come back and win the second and third. And I think that Josh Van is going to get caught a bit more than he's used to, and I think it's really going to surprise him. So give me Charles Johnson, give me energy, give me the skullet to win this fight by decision. Next we have a fight between Montel Jackson and Damon Blackshear. Tough fight to call. Damon Blackshear hit a twister against Jose Johnson in his most recent win. Crazy stuff, not something you see often. Fights Mario Bautista the following week. Insane for this dude to make weight twice in the span of a week, and on top of that, he won the Mario Bautista fight. Go back and watch it, tell me he didn't win, and then I'll tell you why you're wrong. And even with the loss on paper, that fight is aging very well. Mario Bautista is currently ranked 12th in the world at bantamweight. What we know about Blackshear is that he's going to be ultra aggressive. He's going to be the one moving forward, throws really good body kicks, gets to the clinch quickly, and he does good things on the mat. Now on the other side, some serious fucking power. Montel Jackson might have the highest knockdown rate in the UFC, and crazy power for bantamweight. You could almost say unrivaled power. His offensive wrestling is solid as well, but where he struggled in these fights are when guys are able to take him down. Ricky Simone, who is somehow on a 3-fight losing streak now, I can't believe that. Ricky Simone took him down 7 times. Brett Johns took him down 8 times. Those are his only 2 UFC losses, but that's important because he needs to defend takedowns this week against Damon Blackshear. On the feet, I give Jackson the edge all day. He's got ridiculous power, but he's also been able to showcase that power because he's fighting guys who are not good strikers. Ronnie Yaya, come on. JP Bays, Jesse Strader, these guys are not good on the feet. You can argue they're not good overall, but he does have the win over Julio Arce. That's a big feather in the cap. Julio Arce is a dog. But when you look at these guys that he's knocking down and knocking out and beating with his power, these guys are guys who have been hurt many times before. Damon Blackshear's never been knocked out. He's not just going to stand right in front of him. He's going to make him uncomfortable. He's going to make him work. So I expect Damon Blackshear to lean on his wrestling and just outwork Jackson in this fight. Just do more and win the minute. He's coming into this one on a full camp, plus the form he's been in lately. I expect him to get his hand raised in this one. Give me Damon Blackshear, the underdog, to win by decision. Next we have a fight between Jasmine Jasudivicius. She's fighting Fatima Kline, who's making her UFC debut. Jasmine Jasudivicius looks to be in a good spot. Her opponent stepping in on short notice, making her debut, taking a big step up in competition, and fighting a hard-nosed fighter in Jasudivicius. It's not an easy out for anybody unless you're Natalia Silva. And now I'm not saying that Fatima Kline is not on the same level as Natalia Silva, but I'm not ready to say that yet because Natalia Silva is different gravy. I do, however, think that Fatima Kline remains undefeated after this week. She's got a ton of grappling experience and has leaned on that throughout her MMA career. Jasudivicius wins fights with her wrestling and with her control. If she can't win that part of the fight, she loses. And when you go back and look at her opponents, a lot of the ones that she's beating are not very strong grapplers. You can make the case that Miranda Maverick is a good grappler, and I'd be fine with that. She dominated that fight with her grappling, beat Miranda Maverick, who, if you want to say she's solid on the mat, cool, I'm fine with it. But everyone else you can't say the same for. Priscilla Cachoeira Hell no. Gabby Fernandez? Hell no. Kay Hansen, Julia Palastri, who lost her UFC debut because of grappling mistakes. They didn't have much for Jasudivicius on the mat, and she racked up a ton of control time as a result and won these rounds. I don't think that Kline lets that happen. I expect Kline to be the one to get takedowns. Even if she is getting taken down, I expect her to get back up to her feet, defend takedown attempts as well, and I think she's going to look a lot better on the mat than the fighters I just mentioned. So give me the youth, give me the debutante, give me the better grappler. Give me Fatima Kline to win this fight by decision. Next, we have a fight between Luana Santos fighting Mariya Agapova. Listen, the line is pretty wide here. I believe Luana Santos is the biggest favorite on the card, and she is the side that makes way more sense. And if you were to bet on her this week, which I'm not mad at, despite it being chalk and women's MMA, you're not even betting for Luana Santos. You're more so betting against Mariya Agapova, and I don't think that's a bad strategy. Agapova came into the UFC 7-1 record, and she beat up on Lil Hannah Cyphers, who was no longer with the promotion. Follows that up with a loss to Shauna Dobson as one of the biggest favorites in UFC history. And Dobson is no longer with the UFC. She has a win over Sabina Mazo, who, you guessed it, is no longer in the UFC. Since then, she's lost 2 in a row. She's been out of competition for a very long time. She hasn't won a fight in nearly 3 years, and she's probably one more loss away from being released from the UFC. Luana Santos is easily the better choice here. She's more active, more momentum, more confident, more consistent, and she's getting better. She's young in her career, so Luana Santos easily wins this week. Give me Santos by decision. Next, we have a middleweight fight between Josh Fremd and Andre Petrosky. Both of these guys looking to get back on track. Josh Fremd is coming off of a loss that snapped a small winning streak that he'd put together, but he got matched up with Roman Kopylov. Got packed up like so many before him. That means nothing to me. It was a cool way to measure where he's at in the division, but beating Roman Kopylov would have been a massive shock and change the way that I look at Josh Fremd and where he stands at middleweight. But the outcome wasn't surprising one bit, so he still is who he thought he was. A big guy who is good at most things, not exceptional at any one thing. His best win is over Shadrikas Dumas, where he dominated that fight as an underdog, followed it up with an ugly win, has a huge favorite against Jamie Pickett, but again lost last time out against Roman Kopylov. Now on the other side, Andre Petrosky, we've had a perfect read on him in the UFC. We've been right about Andre Petrosky each and every time. Now he's 0-2 in his last 2, and things are looking a bit dicey for Petrosky, I'm going to be honest. He's got good submissions, he's a powerful guy, but Jacob Malkoun was piecing him up. Michel Pereira knocked him out. Even Gerald Meerschaert was giving him all kinds of trouble at striking range, and that's obviously what's going to hold him back in his UFC run. Now, if the fight hits the mat, I can see him having a lot of success because Petrosky does have good submissions. If he finds a choke early or even is in a position to find a choke early, he probably wins the fight. But I don't expect that to happen. Josh Fremd is 4 inches taller. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. He's the better striker, so I see him putting combinations together, avoiding takedowns, getting Petrosky out of there with punches probably in the first or second round. Petrosky just doesn't have as many ways to win. He's going to be at these physical disadvantages. I think on the feet he's going to look lost, and I think he's going to struggle to close the distance because of the size advantage and not being able to hide his takedowns with effective striking. So give me Josh Fremd to win this fight. I believe it'll be by knockout. And lastly, we have a fight between Evan Elder and Darius Flowers. Not sure what the story is behind this one at all. The UFC put this together on very short notice. Evan Elder is coming off of his first UFC win, went to war with Geronimo Valdez, got his hand raised, impressive stuff. While Darius Flowers is coming off of a loss to Michael Johnson that was just embarrassing. It's not embarrassing to lose to Michael Johnson because Michael Johnson is a beast, but he lost every round, was outstruck 2-1, taken down 4 times. He went full William Knight. You never go full William Knight. So I've got zero confidence in him at this point, especially against the guy in Evan Elder who's got a high motor. He's going to fight with a lot of pressure, and we saw him wilt under no pressure against Michael Johnson, and to do this at elevation, crazy. So I think that Evan Elder probably closes him out in the 2nd or 3rd round. Give me Evan Elder to win this fight by knockout. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I'll see you next week for a card that is not as good as this one. Thanks.